Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, brother Banaf. Thank you, brother Naba, for joining us once again for Behind the Final Call cover story. This, of course, is a very important issue of the Final Call newspaper. This is volume number 39. Number 36, cover of the paper is Where Do We Go From Here? Brother Naba, where do we go from here? Why that cover?
Well, I think that is the essential question that is on the minds of Black and white and all of the different people in the United States, as well as around the country. We've seen tremendous unrest. We have seen destruction of property. We have seen loss of life. We have seen words of sympathy. We have seen legal charges pressed against the 4 officers involved when George Floyd lost his life at the hands of police officers in Minneapolis. The reality is, however, while there may be great anticipation and even great hope for change among many in the United States, those changes have not come yet. There, in particular, many Blacks see the numbers of Caucasians in the streets during protests as being significant. They see words spoken by police chiefs who have condemned this incident in Minnesota, while many of these same chiefs have problems in their own departments. And if you were to go in their cities and go into our neighborhoods and ask the people, what do you think of policing? I doubt that you would get an affirmative reaction that people are satisfied with the type of policing they're getting, the level of policing they're getting. So that's this essential question on a lot of different levels. And so we interviewed, activists from around the country talking about what needs to happen. Many of them talked about reforming and recreating or reimagining policing, doing things like defunding police, which does not mean eliminating police. That's another scare tactic that white folks use, and it is a narrative that the mainstream media plays into because they are part of the levers of oppression that have abused Black people, and not only Black people, the white media has abused Black reporters. You've got a couple Black reporters in Pittsburgh, I believe, that were effectively banned from covering protests. It was said that they were not objective. So as we consider different challenges, and ultimately, I think that is the question. Can this situation be resolved? Can it truly be real change? We've seen a number of symbolic things. We've seen some statues come down, for example, because people tore them down. There was a discussion about changing the names from some Army bases. These bases were named after Confederate generals, which I didn't even know. I didn't know that Fort Benning in Georgia was named for a Confederate general. I didn't know that a U.S. military base was named for a traitor and someone who killed U.S. servicemen during the Civil War. So there's a lot to unpack, and if you go to finalcall.com, and you should really subscribe so you can see what are some of the things that folks told us we should look forward to in terms of changing things and their examples of where we go from here.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I want to thank all of those who are joining us live. And I ask for them to please like and share this program. We have K Solo who's sending us the greetings, returning the greetings to us. We got Atik Halim joining us on YouTube. We got Brother Joseph on Facebook. Walaikum salam. And also he's on Facebook and YouTube. So praise due to Allah. Thank you for the support. Brother Matt, best newspaper in the world. Praise due to Allah. And Brother Atik Halim, I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly, but he's definitely showing much love. We got Brother Demetrius X, Walaikum Salam fam, K Solo, representing Truth News, the Final Call newspaper. Matt, actually,
now that's not the rapper K Solo, is it?
I don't know. I don't know.
Spellbound, baby. Anyway, so
we got
K Solo. I'm a big fan from way back.
Okay. You know,
I'm gonna leave that alone.
So we got actually Black American people are winning only if they take this momentum and replace the destroyed businesses in their communities with Black ownership. Praise due to Allah. And that's a little something we'll be talking about in this edition of the paper that reveals.
But the question is, how do you define winning? Who is going to pay for the reconstruction of Black businesses? Right? Some of those businesses did not have insurance. Others are owned by major corporations. Will they rebuild? That's one of the stories that we deal with this week in a piece about building the wasted cities. That's a real question. We know that some areas of, for example, in Chicago, the West Side, were never rebuilt after the 1968 riots. So I think part of the question is, if this is truly a new day and a new time, will the money come in to rebuild? And will that money go to Blacks to ensure more Black ownership and control? That's the question. But I'm telling you, mark my words, if Mr. Biden happens to win and is president, and if he happens to win the House for the Democrats and the Senate for the Democrats, I'm going to guarantee you he will not pass a $1 trillion bill, or they collectively will not pass a $1 trillion bill to rebuild the inner cities. Even though we've seen them create trillions of dollars out of thin air when they felt that it was in the best interest of the economy. So, as the great comedian and philosopher Richard Pryor once said, we will see. And that's not to mock anybody out in the street. That's not to mock anybody raising their voice for justice. It's not to mock anybody who is organizing. It is just to ask some questions so that when discussions are had, we really focus on what it takes to provide us with true justice, true freedom, and true equality. And we cannot be taken off course, if you will, by symbolic gestures, even some kind gestures. But we have to consider, what does justice truly look like? And again, expressing remorse for the death of George Floyd, condemning the officers who were on scene when his life was lost is one thing. Condemning American institutions is another. And the president, the attorney general, and one of the president's top advisors have all gone on record as saying they don't believe that racism exists in police departments. They don't believe that structural racism exists. So if you cannot even agree on the problem and the roots of the problem, can you agree to a solution that's going to work for everybody?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, I want to thank those who are joining us and ask them once again to like and share. We want to jump in right into it. Of course, this edition of the paper, for those who are just joining us right now, it is where do we go from here? And of course, the context, if nobody's been under a rock, they know what's going on in the media with the coronavirus, as well as the rebellion and all of the things that have been happening as it relates to our brother George Floyd and the response to that. So we're going to go to the first article we're going to look at, which is the cover story of the paper, and that is questions remain in the fight for justice for George Floyd and Black America, which is in page 2 of the Final Call newspaper. Can you give me a little context on what that is?
And this is what we were just talking about in terms of where do we go from here. But actually, this whole section of this whole package of articles really all fit under that same heading. Where do we go from here? You've heard people talk about, like I said, disbanding the police or defunding the police. There have been cities where police departments have been so dysfunctional and so out of order that those departments have been basically phased out and a different department came in. So let's say there was a city, let's say Blacktown, Indiana, fictitious town, and their police department was taken over. Their police department was disbanded. What has typically happened is either a police force for the county or the county sheriff's office has stepped in to provide law enforcement. One of the major things that's being said differently now is that people are saying we need to expand that definition of safety and security beyond somebody showing up with a badge and a gun, and to invest money in resolving social problems and bringing some of those social services and experts into emergency situations. So if you have someone who is going through a mental episode and they're not necessarily a danger to anyone. I mean, we've seen police shoot a Black man who was naked in Georgia. I don't remember if they killed him or not. But if a man is naked, obviously running around, there's some mental distress there. Was a gun or a taser the best way to resolve that? In particular, when you're dealing with Black people. So activists and advocates are looking for something different. This is why in Minneapolis, the city council has said they're going to disband the police department and replace it with something else. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to take all police officers off the street. It means that they're spending a tremendous amount of money. I think I heard earlier that America spends about $100 billion on policing. And I don't think that includes settlements that are paid out for bad cops. So some people are saying take some of that money, create some auxiliary forces or services, mental health, do some things to develop youth, do some things to improve schools, to try to lessen the need for police. So those are some of the solutions that people are talking about and talk to us about when they talked about where we go from here and how do we get justice.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And it's important that we don't limit this discussion, and there's a lot of complexity in it. And I don't know, for those who did not get the opportunity to hear Student Minister Ishmael Muhammad on this past Sunday, please visit noi.org/webcast and take the opportunity to hear the light-giving teaching and guidance of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as guided and directed by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan through one of his representatives, Student Minister Ishmael. Has been speaking every Sunday. And of course, you have the opportunity here this evening in probably about a half an hour or hour or so, another episode of The Time and What Must Be Done. And of course, you want to join us on Fridays, every Friday, 7:30 Central Standard Time. If you once again go to noi.org/webcast or study.noi.org, you can hear guiding words from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan through his national spokesperson, Student Minister Ava Muhammad. So you want to just make sure that you're staying in tune and really don't look at what's going on right now from one perspective and saying, well, Black people are out there destroying their communities, or Black people, we're just running out there and we're just marching. And is that there's a lot of complexity, and that's why I really appreciate this edition of the paper, because it talks about some of those things from different perspectives. And with that said, we're going to go ahead and jump to the next article. It's page 3. Charges of the police wilding the streets, protester advocates, brutal cops stop killing and abusing people. Tell me about it. Still killing and abusing Black people.
You know, so again, in the midst of millions of dollars worth of property damage, in the midst of thousands of people in the streets, in the midst of being embarrassed on the world stage, in the midst of great pain and suffering over the death of George Floyd and police abuses, police are still being abusive to protesters. One of the most egregious incidents captured on tape, and again, captured on tape, very critical. In Buffalo, New York, a 75-year-old white man is pushed down by this group of heavily armed special response unit officers. And I don't even know if there's a Black person in the unit. But they push this man down, 75 years old. He goes down like, just no resistance. He just hits that concrete. Starts to bleed from his head. And the cops walk right over him. Some medics, we're told, came and quickly gave him some assistance. So after that, 2 cops were suspended. Every cop in that unit resigned from the unit, but they were allowed to keep their jobs. Interesting. Can you imagine your employer gives you an assignment and you tell your employer, I'm going to resign from that assignment, but you're going to continue to pay me? The 2 officers were then, a couple of days later, they were arraigned in court because they were charged with a couple felony counts in terms of pushing this man. Not extremely serious charges, but charges that said this is wrong and you need to be held accountable. Well, according to media sources in Buffalo, several hundred police officers and firefighters came out to the hearing to show support for the officers accused of pushing this 75-year-old unarmed man to the ground. They had sheets that blocked these 2 men, 2 cops, from being filmed by the media, and they cheered when they came outside. You've had in Atlanta, young man and woman coming, trying to get home from a protest. The police officers ran up on them, broke the windows of their car, punctured their car tires, tased them. The brother ended up having to get about 20 staples in his head. College students from Morehouse and Spelman, just trying to get home from a protest. So there were a number of cops involved. 2 were fired, and some others are still under investigation. Then there was a young woman pulled from her vehicle again by police, and really just flung around like a rag doll. Her collarbone was broken. In Seattle, 14,000 complaints of police abuse have been lodged since the protests. So that would have been what, 10 days, 11 days? And these complaints were before the 11th or 12th day, right? You've had Black people killed. Latino brother out in California who authorities say he was looting. He was on his knees, and the officer saw something that he thought was a weapon, so he shot through his car window and killed this young man. Then you had the shooting of a Black restaurant owner in Louisville, and the cops video cameras were not on. Body cams were not on. You've had people maimed. I read something earlier where a young white woman, it was reported that she died as a result of complications from being tear gassed. You've had journalists beaten and tear gassed. You've had people on their porch in Minneapolis watching people come down the street, the police come down the street, and they were fired on by police. You've had protesters in New York beaten by police, as well as a police vehicle that started ramming into a crowd of people. You've had instances where officers put their knees on people's necks still. So all of these things. And now, imagine, what does that say? That in the middle of protests against brutality, that cops are still brutal. So we wrote about that, and you can go to finalcall.com and check it out. That article is by Sister Charlene Muhammad. But we just wanted to show that the propaganda of police kneeling down, shaking hands, that what was happening was bigger than that. And when you notice that it appears as though these police forces in different cities and in different parts of the country are still abusing people, then says something. But it started right at the White House when the president used federal, he used U.S. Park Police, he used Secret Service Police, he used some other military type folks, not active duty servicemen, we're told, to clear out a peaceful demonstration across from the White House so he could take a photo op. So people were pepper sprayed, they were tear gas, they were beaten. Because they were engaged in their constitutional right to protest, and protest is ultimately it's free speech, and one of the highest forms of free speech, because it says that the offense or my feeling of being aggrieved is so great, I don't need to write you, I don't need to call you, I don't need to send you a petition. I need to leave the safety of my home and go out in the street to show you my displeasure, to appeal to you to change. Finalcall.com, check it out, subscribe, and so you can kind of see what we do every week.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And someone asked a very interesting question. We have a photo, and this photo that's circulating around in the media how come there was no footage of the cops being arrested and then taken into custody? They just show us pictures of the 4 officers in orange shirts.
Well, there would have had to have been video cameras, and we don't know if the cops, if somebody went and arrested them or if they were allowed to turn themselves in. But I think charges have been filed, just like in any other case. The prosecutors have announced that the charges have been filed.
Mhm.
They've announced that there was an arraignment. So I think we can take it on pretty good authority that they have been charged. The question is, will they be convicted?
Yes, sir. And it's just, I think the point is just really is they take the opportunity at any given time for us to be seen in that manner. And even though that's not justice, being able to see that picture, there is something of some feeling of victor, or some feeling of something of that, to see them actually being taken into custody. So,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Well, I think that we cannot say nothing has happened in this case.
Right. True indeed. True indeed.
Because it's rare that officers are charged. It's even rarer that they're convicted.
Right.
So we will see. Some news broke today where someone who said he worked with George Floyd and Chauvin, the officer accused of murder, 2nd degree. This is the man with his knee, the white man with his knee on George Floyd's neck for almost 9 minutes. It broke today that someone else that both of them worked at a nightclub doing security.
Right.
And it was reported today that someone else who worked at the club said there was friction between the two of them on a personal level. So that raises the question of, was that the reason why Officer Chauvin refused to get off of this brother's neck? That there was some kind of personal connection? Again, we'll see. We'll see. As these different accounts come out, we'll see, because I think the argument is that if he knew George Floyd and if they had problems, then his decision to kill him was not an accidental, it wasn't reckless, it was a calculated decision to harm him or to hurt him or to kill him. And people that would argue that that would mean that the charge should be kicked up to 1st-degree murder. We'll see.
Yes, sir. And there's a lot of people who are on and they're asking about separation and what that looks like. And we'll leave some time to kind of get into those, because all of those topics would definitely take a little more attention, but we want to make sure that we get through. And I don't know, Brother Bernard, with all of this is going on, I don't know. Why do I keep on calling you Brother Brother Naba? I don't know why, because in the beginning you were giving me the correct pronunciation, and now you got me saying something totally different. But let's.
That's close enough for now. I'm working on the pronunciation myself.
Yes, sir.
And we can go a little longer if we've got questions or additional things that people want to discuss.
Yes, sir. So let's jump to this article, though. Rebuilding Wasted Cities as a New Movement Begins. Give me a little bit about this story.
You've had tremendous damage in cities across the country. For example, the estimated bill for damages in Minneapolis alone could be $55 billion. That's one city. So again, the question becomes, where will the money come from? Is there the will and desire to rebuild? Who would benefit from rebuilding? And how would that be structured? Because that says something about whether or not you truly want change. So go to finalcall.com, you can check that out. The other thing about that story is it talks about not only how do you rebuild cities as physical structures, but also how do you rebuild people. But paying for those physical structures, whether or not those physical structures are paid to be rebuilt, is a serious question. Because that gets to where money is spent and where cities, politicians, and the federal government spend money says where their priorities are, no matter what they say. So you can say any number of kind words, but if there's no money behind those kind words, then you're just speaking. Because you can't rebuild a neighborhood, you can't rebuild a grocery store, you can't restore a restaurant unless you have resources. So we'll see.
Yes, so. Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and go to this next article on page 5 of the final call. And I got to stress, I'm showing the PDF, which for those who have a digital subscription, you're able to actually view the paper in multiple ways, from looking at the PDF, and actually when we go to the next article, I'll actually bring it up on the website. But if most of us, what we notice about most of our users, this is our main means of communication right here, our phones, as well as our tablets. And I'm not going to give, show the little icon on the back so I can get them, unless they want to sponsor the show with a few $1 million, then we can show the logo that's on the back. But until then, I'm not giving them that type of props. But most of our viewers are viewing and look at the paper from mobile devices, and there are apps for both of them, 2 main operating systems, where you can do tons of different things. So I encourage you, as Brother Naba said, subscribe to the digital edition of the paper, and go ahead and let the paper read to you. If you're getting a little bit old and you can't see that well, you can zoom in so you can see it a little bit better. All of those things are features of the digital edition of the Final Call newspaper. Just jumping right on into the next one is page 5 of the newspaper. 2 articles on here.
Again, 2 additional articles, one out of Philadelphia, where you hear young people expressing what they think need to change and how they think it can change, and offering new ideas about public safety. And in Chicago, even amid the protests, you got Black folks working for progress, trying to clean up and looking at how to restore the communities, how to deal with and serve young people, how to get medicine to the elderly, how to get food to people. There was also a couple incidents in Chicago where officers were accused of being abusive. One officer did an obscene gesture toward protesters. And then there were incidents where officers were shown to have their names and their badge numbers covered up. So the mayor has said that those officers who did those things should be fired. We'll be following up on that declaration by the mayor.
Yes, sir.
But again, what does that say about the culture, the mindset, and the original intent of American policing? Modern policing has its roots in slave patrols.
Exactly.
Controlling Black people, controlling Black bodies, controlling the movement of Black people, and controlling and curtailing activity. So as the sister Ava DuVernay said recently, these systems aren't broken. They are operating exactly how they were intended to do in terms of keeping Black folk under control.
And that's that same point is one that I often make as it relates to education, is that when people say the system isn't working, it's working as it was designed to work and function. And when we look at a society that's rooted and based in white supremacy, you can't expect anything else except white supremacy. So that just goes to the point in that issue that position that many have raised and lifted, which is the position of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, which is separation is the best and only solution. We tried everything else and it hasn't worked. Now it's time to try and do something. We got another article, and it just really shows the the level of commitment that many in our community have and have had and continue to fight for justice in our community. And we have an article dealing with that, with attorneys aim to present plight of Black Americans to the United Nations. Can you give us a little bit about that?
Again, these are attorneys William Crump and attorney Lee Merritt, who have represented families, the family of Ahmaud Arbery killed in Brunswick, Georgia. And they are again seeking to take our plight into an international arena, which, interestingly enough, we have another story on page 17, which talks about a petition taken to the United Nations by people like Paul Robeson and W.E.B. Du Bois, I believe in the 40s or 1951, one or the other, maybe it was 51. And here we are at virtually the same place. And one of the reasons for that petition at the United Nations with Du Bois and Robeson, believe it or not, was police brutality. And guess what one of the cities was back then? There was a problem.
Wow.
Minneapolis. That's written by Lynn Washington, a writer and journalism professor out of Philadelphia. So, again, get your digital edition, go to finalcall.com and just check out what we offer, and you can always verify it. But see if you can learn something and see if it makes sense.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So we're down. You okay? You need to get some water?
Yeah, I'm good.
Praise due to Allah. Hope for change isn't change. Don't be confused. Page
this is my editorial. Yeah, this is my editorial this week. And I wanted to point out the difference between desiring something, marching for something, calling for something, appealing to something, and actually getting the thing that you are desirous of. So many are saying that change has already come. I don't agree with that. I think we still have a way to go. The officers haven't been convicted. Money has not been allocated to rebuild cities. Different police officers who've been involved in police brutality have not been fired. And we saw today very powerful labor unions beginning to strike back. Today there was a hearing about federal legislation to deal with policing and problems in policing, challenges in policing, and even some people offered as solutions. So this bill, or a bill rather, was offered by the Democrats and the Congressional Black Caucus on Monday. It would do things like outlaw the chokehold. It would supposedly make it easier to prosecute cops at the federal level. It would do away with a certain type of immunity that police officers have. It would eliminate no-knock warrants, which is what happened in Lexington, Kentucky, where Breonna Taylor, the cops came to the wrong place, kicked in her door, ended up killing her while she was in her bed. Her fiance, thinking it was a home invasion or something, was a legal weapon owner. He defended his home. And he was arrested and then eventually released, but she's dead. And the police were at the wrong place. The person they were looking for had already been captured. So those are some of the things, as well as to try to expand, money to community groups, et cetera, et cetera. But I saw that hearing. I don't expect much because it immediately became Democrats versus Republicans. And the first thing that the Republicans did was defend Mr. Trump. And what both sides did was talk about the goodness of police officers and how they work and how they serve and how they should be respected. But there wasn't enough talk about accountability in terms of going to jail. And they didn't say that the communities where these officers serve, the majority of the people are law abiding. So there has to be, in my mind, you've got to get beyond this always giving cover to police officers.
Yes, sir.
When police officers act outside of the scope of their duties, why don't they just call criminals and thugs? That's what you call me. So again, that type of pro-police narrative where you got to qualify what you say. And even, like I said, some of the police chiefs that are talking about, what to do and what they've been doing, and they've been doing these things for a couple of years now in their departments. Some of them have problems. Over a particular 5-week period in Houston, 6 people were shot by police officers. Those cases have yet to be fully resolved. And there are others. They had a police chief from Baltimore on one news channel talking about being involved with a reform group. I think if you ask Black Baltimore, and it happens to be my hometown, are they happy with police? You probably get a no. And I really don't know of any city in the country, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, what do you think? Are you happy with how Black people are policed where you are? Why don't you tell me? And thank you. Yeah, let's hit the thumbs up button. Let's share, let's follow, and all of that.
Thank you. We're gonna go ahead and I prematurely popped it up, and we're banging through these articles. But this is an interesting one. I didn't get a chance to get around to this, but it says we charge genocide. Can you give us a little bit about that?
This is the piece by Lynn Washington that I mentioned earlier, and this is about the UN petition decades ago by Paul Robeson and W.E.B. Du Bois, trying to get the UN or UN body to recognize the plight of Black people in America. And one of their major points was that Blacks were suffering from police brutality back then. But it's a really great article. And you should really check it out. It puts things in a very good historical perspective. The author, Lynn Washington, also gives you a good historical perspective. And he shows the arc of how these failures by the white power structure to rein in police in many different ways. Very good piece. See, at the final call, we didn't just discover Black brilliance with the death of George Floyd. We try to seek out Black brilliance, experts, analysts, thinkers, doers, activists, advocates on a weekly basis.
And I got an inside ear to something. You want to give a little promo on one of the special video productions that we should be hearing from the final call? Am I jumping prematurely?
Yeah, you're jumping prematurely.
Okay.
Keep an eye on finalcall.com. That's all I'll say.
You definitely want to do that. But if for those that I will go back, and for those who did not have the opportunity with the coronavirus coverage that we did, there was a beautiful piece that we were able to reach out to the diaspora and really get the perspective of our brothers and sisters on the continent. We had presenters from Uganda, from South Africa, from Turkey. So you want to make sure that you're keeping, of course, you want to make sure that you get the digital edition of the paper, but you want to keep your eyes on the YouTube channel, as well as the Facebook page, as well as the website of the Final Call newspaper. Keep up to what's going on.
Yeah, and you need to follow us on social media because we're putting up a lot of things there. We're hoping to do a forum soon with Black journalists, and we're hoping to include some African journalists or some Black journalists in the diaspora in that discussion to get their view of what did the death of George Floyd mean to them. What did it represent?
And that's what I was talking about, that I didn't want to give everybody the inside. You just want the opportunity to say it yourself, but it's all good. We're
working on it. We're working on it. Inshallah, it'll happen next week, and hopefully we'll get some promotions out relatively soon.
Yes, sir.
So that we can deal with that.
So, of course, one of the things that's interesting, and if you don't already have the book, The Fall of America, pick up the book. It is amazing when you see what Revelation looks like and divine guidance in the midst of all that's going on, that we had a man, and we have a man that has provided us guidance, has provided us direction, has told us where to go and where to stay away from. But unfortunately, many of us didn't listen when we were told. So now we're suffering some of those consequences. But a beautiful article gives you another opportunity to look back and look at the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the divine guidance that we've been given from him. Article in this edition of the paper from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad comes from the book, The Fall of America. Visit store.finalcall.com. It's good to read what's in the Final Call from the book, but man, you need to get the whole book. Brother Bernard, can you?
And then these are really fascinating articles when you consider when they were written. In particular, this one, which is available at finalcall.com, and look at the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's article from last week when he quotes a verse from the Holy Quran about when the cities are burning. And so with the death of George Floyd and the protests, America has lost friendships. She has lost face in the world. It's one of the things that American leaders are concerned about, even though Mr. Trump doesn't be concerned about it. President and some former military leaders are concerned. President and some former political leaders are concerned. Because America is really being shown as the beast that she is, when for so many years she's been able to hide who she is and deceive the whole world. I'm looking for a paper, Brother Troy. That's why I'm off camera. I thought I had a copy.
The latest edition?
Yeah.
Is there a particular page you want to go to, or?
Yeah, well, I wanted to read something. Oh, wait, hold on. No, I wanted to read something from the minister's article. But why don't you go to it? Yeah, the troubled world, the need for justice. Now, remember, the minister gave this lecture in 2014, referring to the death of Mike Brown. He said, Ferguson, now this is before all of the things that we see. So here's a man that gives you divine guidance, and he gives you warning before it happens. And he talked about these explosions in the cities. He talked about how these things would continue. Keep going up a little, Brother Troy.
On to the next page?
No, just keep scrolling up. Okay, come back down a little. This is what he said. Let me try to get. This is what he said. This is in 2014. Minister Farrakhan speaking. I warn you that something terrible is about to go down, and Ferguson is a sign. Now remember, much of what we are seeing today, Ferguson was kind of the fuse, if you will, or the first indicator of the anguish, the pain, and the abuse that Black folk had suffered. And it was erupting, and the murder, the killings that Black folks had suffered. Can you go back to the article? Just want to read one thing real quick. This is the minister speaking, and this is in this week's final call. I warn you that something terrible is about to go down in Ferguson as a sign, a microcosm of the macrocosm. The killing of Mike Brown is one in many, some we know about and some we don't know about. But every major city and town where Black people live, Black men are being shot down by police. So this is like 6 years ago almost, because this was either August or September 2016. And so when you saw these insurrections, these protests, the unrest in cities across the country and in all 50 states, what did that tell you? That told you that the problem is not limited to one region, not one state, nor one city. And if you read that article, the minister talks about what is happening, the targeting of youth. And he says there's a point in there where he talks about the warnings he has given for so long a time. And he said that he's treated like a lovely song. So you hear his words, but you don't change. You meaning we as a people. And we continue to do the things that we do. And unfortunately, we find ourselves losing. We find our children being victimized, our men and our women losing their lives. But he talks about the need for justice in that article. And it's a very insightful article. And we just are calling on you to read it and to think about it.
Yes, sir.
Consider it. And I would say be grateful that you have a man who can give you guidance before the crisis happens, so that if you listen, you can have a better chance of surviving it because you've been warned in advance that it's going to happen.
Yes. Thank you. And I'm one of those people that, man, it's one thing to read the minister's words, but there's a different dynamic or something else that you get out of being able to actually listen to it. So I encourage you that this lecture that we're referring to is available on DVD as well as digital audio download. So I would encourage you is to take the opportunity and go to store.finalcall.com and get the lecture. Hear it yourself, hear the minister's voice. And it was delivered on August 17th, 2014. Please, please, please take the opportunity and check it out.
And this is just an excerpt from a full lecture. So we tried to give you that portion that we felt was especially relevant right now, that showed that we're blessed, brothers and sisters, to have divine guidance and someone who can get us safely through a dark time and a dangerous time by warning us. And we are taught that warning is mercy. But warning can only benefit the one who listens and then acts according to what he's been told or what she has been told.
Yes, sir. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Want to go to, I think we got two more articles that we said we wanted to check on. I want to jump in on the comments and thank all of those who have joined us today again for joining us and sharing your comments. I already popped it up, but I'm gonna pop it up again. Brother Demetrius X, the fall of America is and has, wait, the fall of America is, and
The fall of America has and is coming to reality.
okay. It made sense the first time I read it, but I couldn't get it the second time. It's extraordinary.
Well, it was extra word in there, but I just edited
But yeah,
that out.
yes, sir. Praise you to Allah. Just want to see, looking for the shout outs where everybody's coming in. I know I saw somebody earlier said that they were from Pakistan. We got people joining us from all around the world. We want to thank you once again for your support. And please make sure you're liking and sharing the article and sharing this additional episode of Behind the Final Call cover story live.
And they can sign up to be notified when we come on, right?
Yes, sir, definitely. And of course, if you go to the YouTube channel, and we're going to work on getting up on the Final Call, but you can actually watch this live right now, or if you're of course, most of you are watching it live, of course, or some may be watching the recorded after we've done the show live, but you can watch it live on YouTube. You can go back and watch previous editions on the YouTube channel, but you can also watch it right now. We're streaming live on the Facebook page of the Collective 9, so check us out on there. Make sure you subscribe to all of the social media platforms where you can find the Final Call, which is on Twitter, which is on Facebook, which is on Instagram, representing all over the place. And the same is true with the Collective 9. But please like, share, and support. But one thing that's really, really important, and a lot of people don't do, is, and it's just really to explain, because even for those who don't know, that the minister had been and has been banned from Facebook. And some question, well, why are you still on Facebook? And the reason is because we want to be wherever our people are. And our people are still on Facebook, so we don't, because our minister has been banned, we want to be able to get our message to our people wherever they are. But the way that you want to get to really the information that we're delivering is you really should always go to the place that we have the most control over, which is the Final Call newspaper, finalcall.com. And when you go to the paper, one thing that we really encourage for you to do, along with getting your subscription to the digital edition of the paper, is make sure you subscribe to the mailing list. And what that does is that what we notice is that sometimes, even if you are subscribed to the YouTube channel, you don't always get the notifications. And of course, we know that we have an enemy that can block this communication, but we have a lot more control with the newsletter. So you can get an update when we have special things that are going on. If you're interested in hearing when the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is speaking, if you want to have that type of update on what's going on, please subscribe to the newsletter as well as the digital edition of the paper. And of course, you can do that at finalcall.com. So with that said, we got 2 more articles that we want to touch on, and then we're going to jump back and touch some of these questions. Article or page 36 of the paper: artists, athletes, and entertainers in the streets and the tweet. Page 36.
Yeah, we again showing the wide array of reaction, because I think, and I said this last night, many of us are watching what is happening with white people, and we're paying close attention, and we see something special is happening. I think we would be well served to watch Black people. There's something very special happening. You have so many athletes, so many entertainers speaking out, some leading protests, some just taking part in protests, others using their voices to reach millions of people, to talk about injustices. Michael Jordan put out a statement, and now I believe he said about racism being wrong and it needs to be fixed. And Michael Jordan, I think he's committed to putting out $100 million over the next 10 years, $10 million a year. That's a huge move from Mike, who was not commenting on social or political issues at all. I think something's happening. We need to watch what's happening among our people, as well as what's happening with other people. There's a lot of pain, there's a lot of frustration, but there's a lot of determination, and there's a lot of desire, and there's a lot of hope and there's a lot of seeking something new. There's a lot of of people asking, what can we actually do that's fully new? And I think that is an amazing time, and it opens people up for discussions that I think can be had. I think we should always be sensitive. When we're talking to people, we should be respectful. And we should probably wait until July 4th and hear what the minister has to say, and we should take our cues from him. That's the best advice I can give.
Yes, sir. Thank you. That's the cue that I'm trying to take to the best of my ability, because I know I am not the only one that is looking forward to hearing what the minister says. And we talked about it a little bit last week, and we've been observing what's on social media, and many people have asked the question. And some genuine, of course, I'm not the best knowing, I can't judge the hearts of people, but some genuinely wanting to know if the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is okay, and they're looking forward to hearing from him, want to know why he hasn't spoken. But I'll reflect the words that Student Minister Ishmael said, is that the minister is not one who just speaks because he can. The minister, not, and Brother Naba mentioned in his article that's in the paper this week, is that the minister is not an entertainer. That's not his goal. Even though his words are therapeutic, and even though when we hear his words, we maybe find some degree of peace of heart and mind in him, his words are divinely guided. So what you hear from him is not because he popped up and just said, you know what, people want me to talk, so I'm going to talk. Is that what you hear in truth is the voice of God. You can take that however you want to take it, but that's what you're hearing. And that's why it's able to penetrate the hearts and the minds of the people, because the words that he's speaking are those words that God has placed in his heart and mind, and that he's given. So look forward to it. You don't want to miss the opportunity to hear what the minister has to say. I'm not going to pretend to know what he's going to say, but I can say this. You don't want to miss what he's going to say on July 4th, of course, at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, 8 a.m. Pacific Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Of course, that is the 4th of July, Independence Day. And of course, I'm quite sure the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is going to tell you and give you a little bit more on why he chose that day. Brother Naba, we got another article, and then we're going to jump back into
we can skip that and jump right into the other thing to kind of wrap it up.
Okay. Yes, sir. So even if I missed you, I know some people posted comments early, and I may have missed you. I see one right now, and I'm going to see what this is. Peace and blessings, a call to all Black entertainers, professional athletes, Urban League, and NAACP. Support Farrakhan, justice or else. Without a doubt, that movement has not died, and it is continuing to move forward. Look for something with that in terms of Project Separation. We encourage you to go to projectseparation.com. And if you haven't came up with the thought yet that we must, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, this past Savior's Day, Student Minister Ava has been doing a tour with Project Separation. And the tour was called Should Black People Consider Separation? And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, during the Savior's Day activities, told her to change that title to The Black Man and Woman Must Consider Separation. Interestingly enough, all of this has happened, but it was a nice way to usher us into this, that as we've seen all of the drama and all of these things that have been happening, if only we would have listened to that guidance, would we now be in a better position today? Of course, we got Brother Mike Hughes saying facts. And I'm going to scroll back up. If I missed a question or a comment you had earlier, please post it again so I can catch it. I'm going to try to scroll back up and see if I can find some of those questions that came up. And if not, we'll be looking in the comments after the show. And I don't see anybody popping up the questions. I think we already addressed that one. How come there's no footage? Brother Naba, you addressed that one already. Y'all can help me out. Y'all can help me out. Please make sure you're liking and subscribing and provide us feedback so that we can make sure that we're making the show more better every time we come on. And I don't know if you want to touch this one, but hey, your homeboy K Solo's asking, what does justice look like and what is separation? I know the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's going to touch on it. So,
well, I will point to a couple things. One, we know that justice is the principle of fair dealing. It is one standard applied to all, meaning that it doesn't matter your race, creed, class, or color. Whether you believe in God or not, there's one single standard. We say that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave us an example of what justice looked like when he talked about separation, and he talked about if the white people were sincere after giving us some of the worst treatment in the world for 400 years, that they would give us some of this country for our own, since we could not live together with them in peace. So I would say that is some example of what justice looks like. I would say justice is not kind words. Justice is not symbolic gestures. Justice is related to actions and accountability. And without actions and accountability, I don't think you can have justice. Justice, as we are taught, also means you get what you earned or what you deserve.
yes, sir. Thank you. What does separation truly look like? As the minister teaches, without a vision, the people perish, which comes from the Bible.
We're taught that, first of all, it begins separating yourself from the mindset, the mores, the practices, the traditions, and the beliefs of the enemy. It starts with you mentally and spiritually. From there, we're taught that we should begin to make our communities safe and decent places to live as we take steps toward bigger levels of separation. So that means that we have to be responsible. We have to get involved in all aspects of the lives of our community. And particularly if you live in a majority Black community, that there should be a certain type of leadership and a certain type of service that is working to make our people self-determined and to make our community safe and decent. So we don't feel that we have to leave. We don't have to feel that we're prey in somebody else's hands.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Of course, someone says, which is absolutely correct, there's nothing better you could be doing on the 4th of July than hearing the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. That is an absolute.
I think that that's true, and I don't even know if we need to go any further after that question. But July 4th, and Brother Troy, maybe you can put up the flyer again. And you'll be able to get at NOI.org to hear directly from the minister. You have not heard from him. We have not heard from him in a while. And what a time to hear from him. What an opportunity to hear from him. And what time is the broadcast in the Central Region?
It is at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time.
Yeah. And of course, you've got your other times you can see on the flyer. Go to NOI.org if you want more info. Go to finalcall.com. Again, check out our social media pages. But we anxiously await what the minister will say. It's going to be an incredible day, so I would say we don't want to miss that.
You don't want to miss it. You don't want to miss it. And there's been many who are asking questions. And I think they may be more careful on how they ask them these days. But where's the minister? Where's the FOI? Man, this will be the 90th anniversary of the Nation of Islam, as you understand it and see it today, that this work that we've been doing has been in 90 years. 90 years. You don't want to miss this at all. Someone asked, is he speaking from Chicago? He will be speaking on NOI.org. We don't have a location. At this point in time, my understanding is not going to be an open event in terms of you being able to physically come. But man, you'll have an opportunity to hear the word and the guidance, and that's what we need in this time. And we're going to close out on this one if you want to touch it a little bit. What does the great and dreadful day of the Lord signify? Will we come out with great substance as the scriptures foretell?
Well, I think it's pretty clear. What does great and dreadful day mean? That means a particular time. And in that time, God himself is in control. Will we come out with great substance? Well, what did the scripture say? And if God promised it, it's got to happen. Because the one thing God cannot do is lie.
Well, with that said, man, I want to thank you all once again. Thank you, Brother Naba. Of course, this episode is a little later in the day than usual, but we wanted to make sure that we took another opportunity to come to you live, get your questions, get your feedback, interact with you. And Matt, once again, behind the Final Call cover story. Thank you for your support. Matt, please, you don't want to miss the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, July 4th, 2020. Matt, set up your schedule. Matt, you can have a virtual, they do a lot of little virtual parties and all of that type of stuff. You can jump in your Zoom session, bring up the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and y'all can just, man, have a party, have a Farrakhan party. You know, listen to divine guidance. What more and better use of your time? What could you make a better use of your time than hearing divine guidance from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan? So until next time, behind the Final Call cover story. Assalamu alaikum. Peace.
Peace.